Hi everyone. Thank you for making time today to do this exclusive interview. Of course, you have Djamel, our CEO, who's going to be the main person for this interview. And we have Kubir from Caro Bar Daily, who will be interviewing Djamel. Maybe we can start, Kubir.
Yeah, thank you, Lana. Once again, welcome, Djamel.
Thank you very much.
How have you been?
Happy to talk.
How are you?
I'm very good.
Okay.
Considering everything else, I'm very good.
Okay, I'll just give a little bit of your formal introduction, then we'll enter into the formal interview. We're talking with Djamel Agaoua, the CEO of Rakuten Viber today. Last time also we talked with him about the Viber's development, of course, in Nepal too. Karobar National Economic Daily is doing such kind of interview with many such platforms and other business and economic players in the market. And this is one of the series of our interviews. So welcome, Mr. Djamel. How have you introspect the journey of your last 1 decade? I think you have, Viber has entered into the 1 decade of its being in the market.
Yes, we celebrated last month our 10 years anniversary. Viber was founded in December 2010. It started as a love story. It was, I don't know if you know this story. I mean, Viber was started because one of the founder was in a long distance relationship, and his girlfriend was so far that he couldn't get in touch with her. He couldn't call her as much as he wanted. So they decided to create the first voice over IP system to allow him to contact his girlfriend. It was a love story, and then and now we have a love story with 1 billion people that are using our platform to discuss with their friends, families, and their co-workers, and that's great. So we are 10 years is another industry. It's not it's a young company, but as you know, in the tech industry, we are a dinosaur of the tech industry already.
So what had started as a love story of a person has become a love story of the whole globe now.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and even in a country like Nepal, we have a beautiful adventure with Nepalese.
Okay, what are some of the major milestones that you remember back from 1 decade?
There are so many, but if you think about it, this started with a simple calling service. The idea was to make it possible for people to call their friends and families anywhere in the world, to make it affordable, so affordable that they decided to make it free. And that was a disruption. And then a couple of years later came the messaging services, and we opened services to message anyone in the world, to make sure that people could text, send videos, send pictures, send whatever they wanted to anywhere in the world. And I cannot say that anyone was expecting such a success. It's obvious that when all this started, the founders would have been very happy with 10% of the success that they had. So it was clearly a need. It was clearly a pain for so many people in the world to communicate. We actually know now that, especially in a year like that, this year of pandemic, we know that communication is one of the basic needs. I mean, we need food, we need a home, we need education, and we need to communicate. It's one of the 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we are social animals, and once we have satisfied our 3 basic needs of having a home, having education, having food, we want to talk to other people. And so we are a very important platform for a lot of people in the world. And then that's why we have added more services and more convenience, decided to make it, we try every day to make it faster, to make it safer, to ensure that people can communicate safely with their friends and family. And we also add more services to of their daily life, just like we did, for example, in Nepal with our new service that we launched recently to allow people to send money to each other through Viber.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But since the pandemic has given you a chance, and a lot of other techno companies to come out with such platforms, There are other problems as well. There are security beats. When you talk about safer communication, there's a lot of, there was a case of Facebook, then recently there's a case of WhatsApp. So what do you think? Where is Fiverr's users' database are stored? When we talk about safety, these are the basic things, I think.
First of all, when we talk about safety, we have to split it in three topics that are three objectives that we have at Viber that are at the core of our DNA. The first is to protect the content of the chat and the calls. What you say to your friends, your family, your coworkers, is only for you and your family and your coworkers, and no one else. That's the first objective. The second is to protect the user's data. So the things you like, your personal information, all this needs to be protected, and to ensure that this data is not extracted from you without your consentment to make more money. And the third objective we have is to protect the users themselves from potentially harmful content. Third content, so third objective. So there are three objectives. If you start by the first one, 6 years ago, more or less, 5 to 6 years ago, we decided to activate end-to-end encryption by default for all chat and calls, which means that this technology basically restrict the ability to read the content, to listen to a call, to the people involved in the chat or the call, and no one else, not even our engineers, not even me.
Okay.
I could go to my CTO
so that
and
means
tell him
Fiverr cannot read any of its users' private messages.
Impossible. And the other thing, to make sure that even if someday a new technology was coming to be able to find the keys, once a message is delivered, we delete the file. Once a call is closed, is finished, there is no recording of the call. So even if 1 year later, the Viber policy was changed by a new CEO, or if the servers were hacked, they couldn't find anything that have been exchanged on the platform. This is a very important topic because this is active by default for all private chat and all private calls on Viber. The second topic is the users' data themselves.
Yeah.
And you have to understand why other platforms like Facebook are collecting so many data on the users. Facebook revenue is exclusively based on advertising. To make advertising, you need to target as much as possible the users. To target the users, you need data. So Facebook has become, over the years, a fantastic machine to swallow data from their users, to take data from their users, most of the time without their knowledge. Nobody ever signed for example, nobody ever knew that a like was collected by Facebook. Nobody ever saw that. And as soon as you have a company who is making its revenue only on advertising, you have the risk, the temptation to collect data to increase the revenue opportunity. This is a big difference at Viber because at Viber, advertising is a completely secondary revenue. We do less than 20% of our revenue with advertising. So it's not the heart of our strategy. It's a secondary revenue. So we don't need to collect those data, and we don't do it. We just don't collect as many data as Facebook. We just collect the fewest data as possible, the data we specifically need to provide the service, and only for this. Second, we do it in full transparency, meaning that every time we collect the data from a user, there is a specific permission to collect this data. I'm talking, for example, the phone number or the phone number of your friends. This is something we ask for. We say, do you want to share that with us for the convenience of the service? So it's always transparent. And third, it is never shared with anyone, with any third parties. It's only for the need of providing our service and never to be sold to anyone else. That's the second aspect of the safety of users.
And
we
the
have a
third.
very different. Sorry, what?
And the third one.
And the third one is the safety for users against potentially harmful content. This is a very active debate these days. We all know that, you all remember the words of Mark Zuckerberg himself saying that Facebook is not the arbiter of truth.
Yeah.
And being in that case, which means for them that they should not stop any kind of freedom of expression or freedom of speech on their platform. And we are also in favor of freedom of speech. I mean, we consider that everybody has a right to express his opinion, to make it publicly or privately. No problem with that. The problem comes when some content are specifically illegal in a country, like content that maybe we'll talk about the Holocaust, or things that are not supposed to be discussed on a public platform. And when this content is potentially calling for violence, or when people are organizing operations that can be very violent, like we saw in the United States, for example, recently.
Yeah.
And then we have a different policy as well here, because we consider that as a communication platform, we have a strong responsibility in our society. Not the responsibility to be the arbiter of truth. That's okay. But if somebody organizes a violent action on Viber, we have a problem. So we need to prevent and to spend and invest as much money and resources as possible to fight this. It is not easy, and we cannot even guarantee that we will succeed all the time, because there are so many attempts from people to produce illegal content, or to call for violence in some cases in some countries. But it's a long and painful effort. But if you don't take the fight by just saying it's not my problem, there is absolutely no chance that you even solve 10% or 20% or 80% of the problem. So our objective, we are very humble, and we're not going to say that we are able to secure 100%, because there are so many. But we do a lot of effort using artificial intelligence and human beings to help the computers to track content that are not respecting our policy, to stop it, to ban it in some cases, and at least to make sure that this content is not searchable on the platform. And this is very important. A lot of platforms let any content searchable to anyone, which means that on some messaging platform, for example, a 16-year-old teenager could type on a search engine the name of a drug,
Yeah.
and find a drug reseller in a couple of minutes. I mean, I have kids. I'm a father. I mean, I can tell you that those messaging apps will never come to their phone, because they don't understand their responsibility here. For the search of profit, and to be able to claim that they have a lot of users, they are basically allowing the most disgusting users of the world to make their disgusting business on their platform. And this is not our policy. We spend millions of dollars trying to track those people and to forbid them to use Viber, and to make sure that we, even if we miss them, they are not harmful. To be searchable on Viber, you need to get an agreement. You need to ask for it. So, it's a very different policy, because we are not after maximizing the audience and let anyone saying anything. We say, okay, if you want to be public and to be searchable by anyone, show your content, let's analyze it. And we do our job, we analyze the content, and we give a searchability stamp to this community or group chat to be searchable by anyone.
But when you talk about Viber asks or uses very less data from the users, so has Viber been using, or will it anytime use the users' data in any way?
Well, so let's be very specific. I suppose you are aware of the regulation in Europe called GDPR.
Yeah.
So GDPR is this regulation that basically make them compulsory for every communication platform and every web internet platform to explain clearly what kind of data they collect and to ask permission for everything. And users must have the right to refuse and use the service, and users must have the ability to delete their data. When we implemented GDPR for the Western European countries, we decided that the same policy will apply to everyone in the world.
Okay.
So we apply the same processes in Nepal that we apply in France. We ask people their consentment. We ask people their age, and if the person is too young, for example, it's 16 years old, we don't open the service. We ask people permission to use the data, and we explain them why. Example, if you want to use the location sharing function on Viber, you need to share with us your location. We ask clearly, do you authorize this for the purpose of this service only? Yes or no? If you don't use it, if you don't want to share, we cannot use the service. If you want to use the service, you share. But this data is not shared with anyone else. It's for the usage that we have. So obviously, we are collecting some data, much less than our friends
Any
at
other
Facebook,
platforms?
much less. But every time we collect some data, this data is first requires a consentment. Second is for the own usage of Viber, and third is never sold to anyone else, to any partner, to anyone else. We just don't do it. It's and maybe we'll talk about our partnership with a company called Isiwa in Nepal, and it's exactly the same situation.
Okay, you talk about the very strict rules and regulations that you follow. So in a very short and smart way, how can you describe your privacy policy better than WhatsApp or any other messaging platforms?
That's what I just explained. I mean, it's first of all, transparency.
Okay.
What we collect, we ask for permission, and we tell users what we are doing and why. And that's the case not only in Europe, but in the world. And this is very important because this is a big difference. When you remember the Cambridge Analytica scandal for Facebook, they basically shared with thousands of third parties and thousands of partners the data of tens of millions of users in the US. That's what they've done. It's a fact. It's not an accusation. It's been clearly, that's the Cambridge Analytica scandal. When Mark Zuckerberg went to the US Senate to explain this, he said, sorry, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
And a couple of weeks later, a bunch of memos, internal memos were published where it was clear it was not a mistake. Facebook had a long story of doing, we make things, we break things, we repair later. That's their policy. That's what they have done forever. And probably it's a part of their success and their hypergrowth. And congratulations for this. We have a different policy at Viber, and we have a different policy at Rakuten. We respect our users much more, and we consider that it's not because it's not authorized, it's not because it's not regulated that we are authorized to do it. So, as I said, GDPR was a regulation. We applied GDPR because it was a regulation, but it was not a regulation in Nepal. It was not a regulation in Philippines. It was not a regulation in Russia, but we applied it anyway because it seemed to us that it was the right thing to do despite the lack of regulation. And Facebook has a different policy. They say, if there is no regulation, we'll repair later if we break something.
We'll take advantage.
That's a very different.
Okay, let's talk about WhatsApp again. What do you think that the recent problem with WhatsApp will that benefit to Viber? Like it has in a way benefited in the case of Facebook also?
Yeah, probably yes. You know, I'm not a dreamer. I know that some people are not sensitive to their privacy. some people around me, they tell me, well, I don't care if Facebook has everything on me. I think they're wrong, but that's my personal opinion. I respect opinions. They have a different opinion. And some people are sensitive to it and they just didn't know that. So at least what's good about the WhatsApp story and the WhatsApp movement in terms of terms and conditions is that it raised the awareness of users on the fact that, yes, this company is collecting data for Facebook. And nobody should be surprised, because not only we know what Facebook policy now, but also we should remember that this company has been acquired $19 billion. I repeat the number. I mean, we need to remember this number: $19 billion by Facebook.
Yeah.
And this company, WhatsApp, is doing zero revenue. So in which world we can imagine that a company like Facebook, who is a very respectful business company, acquire a company for 19 billion and don't get any return on investment? So this is the return on investment. The return on investment is collecting data on the billion users of WhatsApp and use this data to make more money with advertising anywhere, not on WhatsApp, but on Instagram, on Facebook, and in all other partners that they are sharing the data with, which is their philosophy. So at least people will understand that, some, and then I suppose that those people will say, okay, what do I do now? I recommend them to send a last message on WhatsApp. That could be, for example, let's switch to Viber. That's my personal recommendation. But I think I recommend them at least to think about it and to make an educated decision now. And this is what we hope for from this story, that people understand what's happening and they make a free decision to either stay with them and live with that, or go for an alternative which has a different policy in terms of data privacy, like Viber.
There has been a lot of backlash against WhatsApp in Nepal too, when we talk about Nepal. So do you think all these Nepali users will switch to Viber, or they will seek for any other alternatives? What do you think? What is your strategy regarding Nepal now?
So I don't think that the people in Nepal are any different from the people in other countries in the world. I think that some people care about their privacy, and then now that they will know, I'm sure they will think about it. Viber has a very strong position in Nepal, and we have a great love story with the Nepalese people. It's 8 million users. People in Nepal are using Viber, and we want to thank them for their trust, and it's the right choice for them. So we have decided to invest more in Nepal by doing a couple of things. The first thing we want to do is to localize more and more our app to make it as Nepalese as possible. It's very important for us. It's very important in our strategy to polish Viber in the key countries to the custom and the culture of the country. So we try to bring local partner, for example, local content, to make sure that the app reflects the daily life of the Nepalese people. And the second topic is to add more services. Communicating is one thing, messaging, calling, and we have all those services. But we think that in the future, people will use Viber as well for other daily actions. One of them is payment. Other could be to book a restaurant, or book a train ticket, or book a bus ticket, or whatever thing that you need in your daily life that could be useful, where we think that Viber could bring a lot of convenience. So we started this journey with the payment services, and we did a first partnership in Nepal.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. You have just recently launched eSeva Chat extension in Nepal. So how safe will the user's transaction by Viber? What do you think?
Yeah, so the transaction is so eSeva is a local company. They have a license for money transfer in Nepal, and we have decided to work with them because they've showed a lot of responsiveness and also a good technology. And what we bring here is a distribution of their service at a massive scale. And what we offer is basically, once you have opened the chat extension, you are securely transferred to eCWA platform.
Okay.
So the security of the transaction is completely ensured by eCWA, and we don't share with eCWA data. We basically ask the users to make the KYC, the Know Your Customer process, on eCWA platform within Viber. And it's something which is important because we don't want users to think that we send to a partner everything we know about them. We simply open the convenience service for them to send money to their friends, just like you send a message to a friend. And this is the first step for journey. If we look a little bit more forward, we can imagine that these services would allow as well to pay in stores. And that this is a service, for example, that we have in other countries. In a country like Ukraine, a Viber user can pay for coffee in a bar with Viber, showing we're using a chatbot, and he can pay directly with the chatbot to the bar or to the local store. And we imagine that kind of service in the future as well being popular in Nepal, because basically think that these little small daily actions can be very, very well handled by Viber as a convenience service. We can increase convenience, we can increase speed, and the more we penetrate the country, the more users we have, the easier it is for users to access those services.
So you started with simply the messaging platform, then now transactions, you entered into the monetary actions as well. Now you are going to the utility services and paying in the restaurants. So what next?
There is no limit to this. For example, we also want to make sure that our services are very useful for local businesses as well. Today, most of the communication are personal communication, our friends, families, co-workers, communities. But in some countries, we have already, in Eastern Europe, for example, Viber is heavily used to communicate with their favorite businesses, with e-commerce companies or retailers or banks or telecom. So, and it's a very safe way and very convenient way. And I'm not even talking only about big companies. We want Viber to be usable by local stores, the hairdresser, the gym club, the restaurant, to discuss with their clients directly on Viber, to be able to provide them information on Viber, to be able to book on Viber, to be able to pay on Viber. And this is a direction. We need to make Viber the universal platform of communication for your friends and family, for your coworkers, but also with all the brands and businesses that you are interacting with on a daily basis. So if we push a little bit forward, we can imagine maybe that we could bring some value into the relationship between doctors and patient, which is something that we have in mind. Viber is a very secure way to exchange information, very secure for the reason I've explained, but also because we have a lot of functions, for example, like a disappearing message. You can delete a message that you have sent on the device of the people that received it. So it's safe to exchange even very personal information with Viber. So why don't we imagine that, and this is something that we are trying in other countries, that doctors and patients have exchanges or even visits directly on Viber, which is something which is very important. And we see the value of this, especially in the pandemic days. A lot of people are afraid to go to doctors for something else than COVID because they're afraid to get COVID at the doctor. So having a remote interaction with doctors, for example, for other basic stuff, may be a good service. And in the US, for example, it's something that is appearing, and in Western Europe as well. So I personally think that the world is evolving more or less in the same direction, and I think that it could happen as well in Nepal.
So I think the growth in terms of Nepal users has been very tremendous. What do you think?
We can't complain. we have a good relationship with the Nepalese people, and we have the impression that the Nepalese people are using Viber heavily. We're very happy with that, and we want to thank them. But I also think that in the next years we will get much more users, I think, as well, because the smartphone penetration is not at the maximum.
Yeah.
There is with more and more smartphone in circulation coming in the coming years. There are more and more cheap devices that will fit with the needs of people that maybe cannot afford the most expensive ones. So there will be more smartphone, and more smartphone will drive more Viber users. So we definitely think that we can double the size of a Viber base in the next 3 years.
So the final question is, what is your message to the Nepali users in terms of security again, to much more bond this love story with Viber, between Viber and Nepali people?
My message is very simple: we are definitely, Viber is definitely the safest place on the planet to discuss to run your private conversation. It is definitely the safest place. And Viber should be your first choice for any conversation that you want to make sure that is listened only by the people involved and by anyone else. That's one thing. And the second thing is, the second message I have for them is, the people in Nepal seems to be a little bit one of the smart people in the world, because they are using Viber more than other countries. So they probably understood that before the other ones, before other countries. So I want to tell them thank you, because as I said, Viber is very popular in Nepal, and we are very happy with that.
Thank you, Djamel Agaoua, the CEO of Rakuten Viber. Thank you on behalf of Karobar National Economic Daily, Karobar e-Karobar, karobardaily.com, english.karobardaily.com, and Karobar YouTube channel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.